can you see this person's perspective, but can you see beyond this barrier that is in front of you right now? And we do get to that place of gratitude and actually appreciation. Now, it takes us refusing to stay in a victim mindset in order to do that.
We're not victims.
We are not. We are not.
We want to welcome everybody to our room today. This is Launch Date. I'm Devon.
And I am Teri. Welcome. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Today is our Popcorn Topics Day. Our comment section comes from the comments below. Wherever you see this, you can leave us a comment. Now, we don't see everybody, but we try to see everybody. And you can also send a message to devonoday@gmail.com if you have a question. We're not bringing you on live, so don't worry. If you're sitting there in your house coat and you're kind of embarrassed to be on camera with us, that's okay. We're not going to put you on camera. But you can leave your comments in just like Joyce just did and said, "Good afternoon, beautiful ladies. Good afternoon, beautiful Joyce. We're loving having you here." And Rhonda joins us.
Hey,
Rhonda's in our room every week.
That's right.
Today I want to start I saw a movie last night, and I want to tell everyone, oh, Candy just joined us. Hey, Candy.
Hey, Candy.
Today, I want to start with the popcorn topic of family issues. And there was a movie that I just saw, Elizabeth. Hey.
Hey there.
And Lisa, who joins us.
Hey,
Hey, Lisa. Okay, the gang's in the house. So today we're going to talk about family issues. We're going to start with that as our springboard of popcorn topics. The movie was called Flag Day. Sean Penn is in it. It is on Amazon Prime, and it is about a young woman who keeps trying to connect with her father, who is kind of a screw up. And you realize he's been in prison. He's done these things, but he's always promising stuff. But he's a habitual liar. And as much as he wants to be her dad, he just doesn't have the tools. How do you deal with being the child of a parent who has let you down every single time? This is not abuse in the typical, he didn't hit her, he didn't do anything. It was habitual abuse.
Well, neglect. Perhaps.
Lying. I'm thinking habitual, and I'm thinking like, abuse in the terms of words.
If a parent, I don't know if everybody's freezing up or if it's just. Are you free? Am I freezing up on you? Because we've got a funky little connection going on here.
Yeah, you are freezing up on me, but we see you and we can hear you.
Okay. So, what was the question?
The question is, what do we do when a parent consistently lets us down?
Depends on our age. Because if we have another parent or another family member that can not necessarily fill that gap, but support us and surround us with love and all of that jazz that is much needed when we're young, then we have less of a likelihood of growing up having a lot of or several family issues or feeling neglected as an adult. If we have a parent that shows up as an adult and they are continually neglecting and just not able to show up for their child, their adult child, then there's some decisions to be made about them where they are and adjusting your expectation and understanding that you have a free will to get help from a professional around that, get support, lean on friends. A family or a parent is not the only person, a parent or grandparent or sibling are not the only people that can fill that cup. Although when they are short on that cup, it can actually feel like a huge deficit for us.
Mm.
And we can have people that miss the mark all the time. Maybe they don't, maybe they have a hard time keeping a job. Maybe they've got addiction. I never look at incarceration as being a screw up, because you know me, I've worked with the gentleman at Riverbend Prison, and I've been told more than one time that that experience getting them there has saved their life and has given them a second chance. And so
Wow.
that's just, you know, sometimes it doesn't feel like a gift in the moment, but it can be a gift if we see it that way or choose to see it that way.
There's this poignant scene where the dad has made the promise of this fancy car and how he has put money down on this fancy car. And she says, I don't want a fancy car. I want you. I want my dad. And so he
Mm-hmm.
gets on the phone and he starts talking on the landline to this guy who's put a deposit on this fancy car. He said, well, she's just changed her mind. In the meantime, she looks at where the phone is plugged into the wall and unplugs it and just holds the wire and sits there. And he's carrying on the conversation. And she goes, Dad, I know. And she's holding the cord. And he goes, I'll have to call you back. Obviously, just someone who's not even on the line or whatever. He has so committed to his lie that even when she confronts him, and that's when you almost have to put them in a category, I think, of I know who you are. I can see you, but I can't trust you to provide X, Y, or Z. But I can still respect you and love you as the person who gave me life. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah, you can put them in a category of you're not a safe person for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't necessarily mean physically safe. You can be an emotionally unsafe person. We can have people who are mentally unsafe people, who are
Mm-hmm.
financially unsafe people, who are spiritually unsafe people.
Ooh.
We can have people, you know, in our lives that are unsafe. And doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
they're bad people, because we all know, I mean, you know, how many times have you heard me say we are not completely a product of our life experiences, because we have the ability to shift our reactions and responses at any time. But our life experiences and circumstances definitely play a role in how we show up. And when we start showing up differently, then things happen differently. And we can look at that parent that can't show up or they're not able to be available for us. And it can be, why me? Why me? Why is this always happening to me? Or it can be, I can't stand them. They're so lazy. They're a liar. They're this, they're that. Or it can be, you know what? This is who I have as a parent. And I'm going to respect myself enough to implement some boundaries. And I'm going to love them from the facet that I can love them from, but not have an expectation that they can give me more. Because some people are born with a capacity to hold 10 gallons of empathy, compassion, trust, and love, and other people are born with a 2-gallon capacity. And you cannot judge the 2-gallon person because they don't have it.
I love that. We need to remember that. Don't judge the 2-gallon person on their capacity because they just don't have it. If someone comes into your life and you, through some no fault of their own, they lose an appendage, you can't punish them because they don't have all of their appendages, because that's just who they are. I gotcha. And sometimes an
Yeah.
appendage is their communication. Sometimes their appendage they lose is their ability to tell the truth. Candy says, Lord, I had family issues, but I had a good friend and spent a lot of time with her and her family. Not that they didn't have problems too, but I always felt welcomed. That's good. Let's talk about our
Mm-hmm.
chosen families. That's another way to really deal with it. I always think that a family will be provided for us. If we have issues with our birth family, is that we can. I've watched you, Teri, your relationship with your Donna. Let's just talk about that.
Madonna.
Your Donna. And, you guys have just been there for each other and experienced life within your familial family. but there's been a lot of support there too.
Absolutely, absolutely. As children, we navigated emotional landmines left and right at the hands of an unhealthy father on my end, and with a grandmother and a grandfather who are Donna's mom and dad. Um, Donna is adopted, and so she's a year older than me, and I'm always thrilled to tell people that she reconnected with her birth father. And so my grandparents have passed on, but she has a whole new life now with her birth father, which is so exciting. And I get to live
Mhm.
through that love that she sees with him. But Donna, Donna is not only, I consider my blood family, she is also my chosen family. And we
Mhm.
have been through a lot together, but it's when we see someone and love them unconditionally. We see them and love them for who they are, for how they show up. And we don't judge them by saying, well, that's just who they are, because we're never just who we are. We are who we are in a season, we are who we are in a moment, but we're not who we are like forever when it comes to those unsavory characteristics.
Which is the next question. Can people change? That's the other popcorn. I'm going to throw that out there. Can people change?
It's a Depends on if it's a priority. I mean, now
Can,
if we're
will is another question.
sure, can people change? Well, there's a lot of facets to that. How many times have we all heard people say, well, a leopard never changes or a zebra never changes. Sorry, say a leopard never changes its stripes. A zebra never changes its stripes, or a leopard, never loses its spots or whatever. I don't believe that. Now, are there people who have some mental health issues that it's challenging for them? Yes. Are there
Mhm.
people who have been wounded and they live in a place of fear because they're afraid of being hurt, or they need to
Mhm.
control everything in their life? Yes. But can people by and large shift the way that they show up?
Mhm.
100% yes, if they choose to make themselves a priority in that space. They cannot shift and change for other people, and I think I just froze up there, but what I'd said was they cannot change and shift for other people. But if they change and shift for themselves,
Mhm.
then they're creating some sustainability
Oh, that's
in
good.
becoming a new person.
It's like the addict who works a program doesn't have to remain the addict. They can change if they work their program. And there's a lot of ifs. Elizabeth says, for me, I've accepted that my parents are who they are. I don't expect them to change. I found a way to accept and live with what works for me. Joyce has always got words of wisdom. My stepson has been this type dad, has three children that he's not been there for his kids in all their growing up years. And now he has problems trying to reconnect and having a relationship now. Now, that happens so many times. The young parent does not know how to parent and then they come back. He's been in and out of prison a lot in his life. It's caused a lot of hurt and hard feelings with me and his dad as well. His kids are wonderful, thank goodness, due to their great mothers. So sad. Oh, Joyce, that's a big box to open.
That is. And here's the thing is that getting into that place where we can meet a person where they are and decide how much energy you want to give. If a person is someone who continues to show up in your life and continues to offend, they continue to hurt, they continue, and there is the only thing that is putting them in a positive light is your wish and want for them to be different. You can wish and want all day long. You can even pray about it. But if that person doesn't feel that love, doesn't feel that worth, doesn't feel that value, or doesn't have that skill set because of their own modeling or their own perceived limited
Mm.
abilities, then they will likely stay in that space until they're uncomfortable being there. I tell people all the time, don't ever write anybody off, because you don't have to sit down to Sunday dinner with a person every Sunday, and you don't have to fake it until you make it, and you don't have to act like you like somebody and their actions and behaviors are okay. But you
Mm-hmm.
also don't have to write them off. You can, the
Mm.
metaphor or the analogy is, we've talked about this before. You have the bouquet of balloons and they have 6 foot strings to them, and you're holding everybody right here in front of you, and you might have that one person that you just need to give them all 6 foot of that string, and they need to fly above everybody else over off into the corner. You haven't lost sight of them. You can still get to them if they need you or you need them, but they're not right in your face sucking your energy and
Woo.
demanding from you.
Good. You're talking about my family, Rhonda says. I just had a conversation with my brother with regard to breaking the cycle. Well, first of all, the conversation about breaking the cycle is a very important one to have. She continues, my dad is not safe for me or my brother.
Yeah.
That's a
And so
good realization.
knowing absolutely. And it takes a lot, one, to be able to um, find yourself in a space where you are accepting of the fact that someone that you love or that you want to love is unsafe for you. And then the next equally powerful move is to actually verbalize that out loud so that you can start your own plan of how you can be safe for yourself. Because when we show up safe for ourselves, we don't allow unsafe people inside that space.
Mm,
We can love them and we can keep them in their space, but they're not allowed to come in our space and dig through our cupboards.
mm. I love that one. Elizabeth, I agree with you. Serenity prayer time. I can only control my behavior and responses. I sometimes have the courage to talk about real stuff, and I know enough to know when not to even bring the topic X up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we've learned to avoid poking the bear. Don't poke the bear. Don't step on the landmine. Don't break
Right,
the eggshell.
right. And also love yourself enough to not continually subject yourself to the eggshell, the landmine, and the bear. Like know when to anticipate them. You know, I just had this conversation with a client earlier today. When we live in crisis thinking, our brain will always tell us there's a crisis. So when we're brought up in an
Ooh.
environment where it's unsafe, when we're brought up in an environment where it's unsafe, the brain will always say, this is familiar. There's a bear, there's a bear, there's a bear. And it really may not be a bear. It might be, um, you know, crepe myrtle that hadn't bloomed yet that just looks like a bear. So we create this issue out of it. And when we start doing our work, we recognize that fear might come up, and we might be like, everybody always does this, and nobody ever changes, and da 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 da. Da. But that's that crisis thinking going, yep, you're right, you're right, and the brain is only doing what it's been trained to do. Now we don't
Mm.
like to admit that we have trained our brain this way.
Hmm.
Nobody really likes to admit that, but we didn't initially insert the SIM card. That was inserted from family of origin or whatever. And we just wrote the program and kept that program going. So when, as Rhonda said, her father's not safe for her or her brother. So Rhonda and her brother get to now decide how they want to anticipate the bear, right? If we're
Hmm.
going to a zoo, we know we're going to see a bear. But if I'm checking my mailbox, I'm not really expecting to see a bear pop out and get me. But if I've been trained to always seek crisis, I will be scared to go out and do anything because there'll be a bear out there.
When we live in crisis thinking, our brain is always in a crisis.
What about this? I'm not a
Mhm.
fan of snakes. I think anyone who knows me knows that I am not a huge fan of snakes. Well, I went out last week to do Otis, my littlest dog or littlest pup, he found a snake for me. Now, he didn't bother it, but he just said, "Hey, mom, there's a snake over here." And it was a garter snake. So it was not it was one of the good guys, but it's nonetheless a snake. So my brain saw the snake. I have had trauma around snakes in my life. So for
Mhm.
the next week, every time I went outside, my brain was trying to find a bear. In this case, it was a snake. So everywhere I looked, there's a stick, looks like a snake. I better look under here. What if there's a snake? So I was constantly anticipating that I was going to see it because my brain had already experienced it and it was triggering for me.
Mm.
So crisis thinking leads to triggering. Triggering leads to whatever that fear is: poking the bear, seeing the snake, losing the job, having the boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife cheat and leave, whatever, being rejected, being
Anticipating,
abandoned.
always anticipating a bear brings the bear to you. That's Native American medicine too. If you are constantly looking for the fear will find you. It manifests by our thoughts and how we bring it about. If you hunt a bear long enough, you will find the bear. You
Well,
just,
and if we want to jump off, 1 foot into the woo-woo world, that's the law of attraction.
uh-huh.
I've said this a dozen times. A few years ago, I was going to buy a Jeep, and I thought to myself, I think I want a Jeep. I don't know what kind of Jeep I want. For the next 3 months, all I saw was Jeeps. I saw every kind of Jeep, every color of Jeep. I saw broke down Jeeps and Jeeps on trucks and Jeeps driving down the road. And that's only because I planted that in my brain. I wasn't actively like, oh, let me see if I can find one.
Mm-hmm.
But subconsciously, I was seeing them because I was focusing on them internally.
And it brings you there.
And
You
it brings
notice
it
them.
it adjusts the lens and then there it is.
They're everywhere. Elizabeth, I have my family and my family of the heart. I love that. A lot of folks know Donna. I love Teri's Donna. That's what Rhonda says. Yes, she does. We know this. Candy says, yes, people can change if they want to. My sister and brother and I haven't lived in the same state for almost 40 years. After my mother passed, my brother, sister, and I have gotten closer.
Yeah.
So there are some changes that can happen. Elizabeth, on the other hand, says, I cut off all ties with my parents and one brother's family for 4.5 years, 4.5 years. I needed that break in early recovery so that I could stay sober and work on my stuff. That is
Mm-hmm.
that is someone who's working a program. Now I can spend time with them and love them, and I don't lose my mind. Whoo!
Mm-hmm.
Good, good, good. When we take care of our stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it works out the other people's stuff for us. We don't have to fix them. We don't have to work it out. And
No.
we know how to keep our sanity and our sobriety within that framework. She also continues, yes, living in crisis is so incredibly emotionally draining that it gets hard to see the forest through the trees.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that helps us when we are in crisis mode is to make the commitment to be decisive, to be compassionate, to be honest with ourselves about where those bears really live and how much energy we're giving them. Because
Mm-hmm.
if we have someone who has offended us years ago and we wake up every day still blaming, still shaming, blaming them, shaming us, um, and assuming that everyone else is going to treat us the way that person did, and I get I know people don't like it. I'm okay with that. At that point, when we're living in that space, we are our own biggest betrayer. We are our own biggest
Mm.
bully. And we cannot blame that person or those persons for us being miserable for something that happened to us 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, et cetera, and so on years ago. Doesn't mean you forget it. Doesn't even mean you have to forgive it. It just means we don't get to blame. We're adults. We pay taxes. Most of us do. So, you know, we have to be responsible.
Yeah. Candy says, so unsafe that 3 out of 5 kids ran away. And I was told to, he said, my father, or get out. So I left. I was 18. Regina also mentions being raised in an unsafe family situation. Um, and we carry around our survival skills of those periods of time. But at that time, they kept us alive.
Mhm.
Now, Ted Klontz, who is an amazing counselor, says our survival skills that served us well in our childhood will destroy all of our relationships, not one, but all of our relationships in our current situation, because the adult cannot use the same survival technique and be effective.
Amen. And to that, I would say, just like my jeans in college. My jeans in college looked good on me, and I loved them, and I looked good in them. But I couldn't get my butt in those jeans today if
They
I
don't no
tried to.
longer a good
And
fit.
if I sit around, right? And if I sit around all day long and hate myself because I can't wear a pair of jeans that I wore 40 years ago, who's doing that to me? Me. You know,
Mhm.
the things that from our and I just was talking with somebody the other day about, our polyvagal nerves and the way that our trauma and stuff forms. If we are constantly um, living in the past, we are missing the now. We are missing the future, you know,
Mhm. That's
missing the now,
good.
missing the future. Because those things that served as survival for us when we were younger, they're not applicable now. But we create
They just don't
scenarios
work.
and we attract people to keep us using them.
Absolutely. Ooh, Terry Elizabeth says, I know someone who needs to hear that today. Be decisive and be firm. Rhonda, I made peace.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like my dad and his behavior over the years, but my brother isn't there yet. Am I going to have my dad come visit Tennessee? Nope, but that's okay. I've lived in Tennessee for 26 years now. My brother and I can finally have phone conversations, not that often, but we are talking. That is an improvement. We're going to wrap around that one. Is I think giving ourselves grace for where we are right now. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so I don't have a Walton family moment. I don't have a Hallmark movie Christmas. That's okay. Most people don't.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't. And
The reality is most people don't.
yeah, exactly. So the expectation, giving ourselves some grace to the fact that I am big enough to move to a conversation when I have been estranged for years and not being able to, whoo, good.
Absolutely. And being okay with having healthy conversations around, what, we will start this conversation, and if at any point for either one of us it feels a little prickly and we need to put a pin in it, then we'll respect one another and do that. We won't push our opinions on the other, and we won't try to make someone see our point of view when they can't see through that lens. That's the most
Mm.
frustrating thing for a lot of people, is that, you have to understand my point of view. Well, sometimes as siblings have completely different points of views about their parents because they are born, or they're born in different times of the parent's life, or they're treated differently by the parents. And so it's really hard to have someone say, well, I was the responsible one and y'all don't understand, da 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 da. When
Mhm.
another sibling says, well, they just loved and nurtured me all the time, and I don't understand why you feel this way about them. And it's like,
Ooh,
because parents,
yes.
it's different, right? And it's not a judgment. There's
Mhm.
not a judgment there on the parents about that. It's just that, they have kids at different times. They have different stressors in their lives. And then yes, sometimes, if we're being real, they're parents that treat their children noticeably different. We don't know why. They know why,
Mhm.
you know.
Candy says we live in not only dysfunctional families but a dysfunctional world. We just have to try to do the best we can. True, you know. And Elizabeth says bullseye, Terry, different experiences in the same family. That is huge.
Mm-hmm.
because you can really think you're losing it when the other siblings didn't have your experience and tell you that your experience didn't happen. But you
Right,
know it did because
right,
it happened to you, you know.
right.
And Candy says, "Oh my siblings and I've been talking lately about the different ways each parent was toward each of us. I couldn't believe it. That's huge. Maybe that's where the conversations can start as we
Mm-hmm.
bring this show, this popcorn potpourri of ideas with our dysfunctional families and how to deal with our stuff to a close. We start with, let's just talk about how different the experiences were for each of us, because I will guarantee you every sibling has a different reality.
Absolutely. And when you sit down to have that conversation, create a space for just hearing them and not trying to justify. Because if you have a sibling look at you and say, well, I always got secondhand clothes and they always took you to Nordstrom, you know, hear them out. Don't be so quick to go, well, that's not true. I mean, just hear them out because
Yeah.
they're sharing from a place of vulnerability going, this is my take on it. This was through my lens.
Mm-hmm.
And so quickly we try to justify and deflect and just hear someone out because it's okay if we've been treated differently. That's okay. I mean, not okay in the sense that it's okay for parents to do that, but they do it. So what are you going to do? But it's okay as adults if you're able to go, wow, like I hear you. I hear what you're saying, and wow, I had no idea. And sometimes we really don't have an idea. And sometimes, you know, not sometimes, well, yeah, sometimes it can be incredibly healing for a family unit. And oftentimes it does happen after the parents have transitioned because the kids just don't want to stir the pot, don't want to hurt the parents, don't want to, because let's face it, we get older and then all of a sudden, people feel sorry for the elderly. And I'm not knocking it. That's wonderful. But just because you had dysfunctional parents when they were younger, it doesn't mean that they're not still dysfunctional when they get older.
Oh,
Right.
that's
And
good.
you can still love them, you know,
Mm-hmm. But
or not, whatever works for you.
I'm going to bring something up that you taught me. I'm just going to, it's one of my sessions with you, and I'll talk about that right at the very end. But Candy says, I am just listening, not judging. Joyce says,
Right.
I've always tried to be the responsible one with me and my sister. She always had more needs just because I kept my needs to myself. So I didn't want to bother my parents, and she kept them on their toes all the time. Whew. I
Okay.
can relate. Kind of sad
Okay.
because I never really showed a lot of pain, hurt, or anything around them, and never have.
Okay. So I'm going to jump in here super quick. And Joyce, I would challenge you to look at the wording when you say, she's always had more needs just because I kept mine to myself. She might didn't. That is that even correct grammar? I don't think so.
Mhm.
Perhaps she didn't have more needs, but because you didn't share your needs, it felt
Mhm.
like more. And you are equally deserving to have your needs met. Then, now, tomorrow, 20 years from now. Your needs are never less than anyone else's. Never, ever, ever.
Well, that's a brilliant way to bring that around, and starting the conversation. Be decisive, be compassionate, and be honest. I love those three: decisive, compassionate, honest. And that's what we
Well,
take from today.
here's the kicker with those. When we are decisive, compassionate, and honest and direct with ourself first and foremost,
Mhm.
then we take ourselves from the place that we are currently, which maybe we're not crazy about it. Maybe we love it, maybe we don't, like maybe we're just kind of meh. But we take ourselves when we hold ourselves accountable to those standards and we get ourselves to a
Mhm.
place where we want to be and we move in that direction. And you're welcome,
Oh,
Joyce. I appreciate you too.
y'all, that brings us to the end of this show. And we encourage you that if we ever trigger something or we open a box and it's like Jack in the Box pops out, and then all of a sudden the other Jack in the Boxes, and you feel like you're in the middle of a Jack in the Box whack-a-mole game. Call Teri. Something she told me on this was, it was a really funny thing, and I bet you don't even remember. You said, because I love my mama. I love my mama, but my mama and I had a troubled relationship. My mama's she is a hard ass. I'm gonna tell you, she is tough as two boots. They called her two boots growing up, and there's a reason for that. And I was the oldest. And you said, well, what would you have her do now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I remember that.
And then the second thing you said, if she were a funny lady who was the mother to one of your friends, how would you respond to her? Change your perspective. And all of a sudden, I saw Dorothy and Sophia from the Golden Girls. I saw this Southern Sophia and I saw Dorothy. And if she belonged to somebody else, I would laugh my butt off at the things that she does and things she says. Change your perspective, change your past. And that was something that Teri gave me that I want to tell you, it helped me, because when she says something that could be so hurtful to me, I'm watching a television show and it's the Golden Girls, only it's in Louisiana, and she loves me, and I know that. And I can laugh at the stuff that I used to literally, it would just destroy me. And now, because she's Sophia and I am Dorothy, I laugh and I pull out pamphlets for Shady Pines.
Yep.
And I go, well, excuse me.
Uh-huh. Well, and that's it. Changing our perspective allows us to shift our future. Mm-hmm. We're not ever going to go back and change what was done in the past, but we can absolutely detach in a loving way from the way that we were once so Velcroed to what people say because it hurts us. We can detach from that and just say, woof, all right, Sophia, where are you going with that? I mean, and in a loving way. And sometimes maybe that's even what you say in your head, but was it Eleanor Roosevelt that said that people cannot offend us? Or what's her quote? Her famous quote about people can't allow them to.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's
I don't know the
lines.
quote. Yeah.
But the bottom line is, yes, people do things, they've done things in our past that maybe aren't the greatest. But as adults in our now, the only people that are in control of changing that are us individually. So being decisive, being direct, being compassionate, and being honest about what your needs are, what your expectations are, and what your boundaries are with yourself and others. That
I remember
your life.
I remember you looking at me and you said, okay, first, what would you have them do today? And I said, well, I want them to realize what they did. I want them to admit they are wrong and apologize. Okay, that's not going to happen, Devon. So now what do you want?
I know. It was one
that's
of those
not going to
happen.
And I just remember I felt like I'd gotten slapped by you. But you said, if this were somebody else, how would you react? And I said, I would laugh. If this were on TV, if this were a movie, I would laugh. And so that's what I started doing. When something was said, I would start laughing, because in my mind, I just switched it to, this is a game show. This is a TV show. This is a movie. And it's hilarious. If I were writing this script, I would laugh. And laughter helps.
Yes. Right. And there's things, and we're talking about too, when we have a relationship with someone who, and we all have these people in our lives. We're having a relationship with someone who is not going to change. And let's be real. We have people in our lives that we can love, and they are just not going to change.
Mhm.
And so we have to find a way to navigate that. And if that is pulling up something that is comical, it doesn't mean that if you felt you needed to set a boundary, you couldn't do that. But it
Right.
also means that if this person has never changed, they're probably not going to honor that boundary anyway. So we have to find a way that keeps us afloat mentally,
Yeah.
spiritually, emotionally.
Yeah. We have to live in our world. We have to
Mm-hmm.
live in our world, and we can thrive in our world, even if it is a bad one. You sound just like me. Elizabeth says life gets better when we don't need them to say that to us. Yeah. You know what? When it's just like, okay, we're not going to get that. What you going to do now? Are you going to just suck your
Mm-hmm.
thumb for the rest of your life, waiting for something that's never going to come? No. It's just like that movie. And I recommend watching the movie Flag Day. Get your tissues out. It's going to open you up. And I will give you a trigger warning. Even if it's not your story, it will make you remember your story. And it's on Amazon Prime right now. Sean Penn stars in it, and it is he actually produced it and wrote the screenplay. It's well, Elizabeth says, put on big girl panties and move forward. I actually had to put my little girl panties on for that one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the deal, is when you ain't gonna get what you think you deserve, then you decide, okay, I'm going to change what I'm going to view it differently. And we're going to close by telling people where they can find us. You can always reach me, devonodey@gmail.com. And Teri, bring us home.
They can find me at terrypugh.com. And as always, we appreciate you all joining us. We love you, as Devon says,
Mm.
more than lunch and jewelry. And we cannot wait to see you again next week. So until then, let's just create mindful moments that tip the scale in favor of a memorable day and increase your peace. See ya.
Bye.